Welcome, everyone. This is Yvonne Davis and David Steele of,
Glad to meet you.
of Rocky Mountain Compassionate Communication Network, and we're here to discuss NVC principles in relationship to The Artist's Way by Juliet Cameron. So today we are going to talk about a concept of self-awareness, and we're coming toward the end of the week 2 discussion of recovering a sense of identity. And so another word we use for for identity is self. So self-awareness is extremely important. Our last video was on intention and attention, and this directly relates also to self-awareness. So I want to start this off by sharing with you an article I ran across on the internet. It's titled, What Self-Awareness Really Is and How to Cultivate It. And this is published in the Harvard Business Review, and it's written by Tasha Eurich. So this relates to a scientific study done about self-awareness and what it is. I was particularly intrigued by this quadrant map of self-awareness that says basically there are people who have high self-awareness and people who have low self-awareness. And then there are 2 categories in which one might have self-awareness. One is of the self, which means who am I, what are my values, what are my needs, how do I feel. There's a strong sense of understanding one's internal self dynamic and how one exists in the world. But there's another side to self-awareness, which is how does my sense of self, who I believe I am, match what other people think about me and how do they see me? And the reason why this is important is because if there is an extreme disconnect between how you view yourself and how other people view you, to a large degree, you're not going to be able to express yourself well in relationships and in situations in the world because you're not in alignment in a sense. So you maybe are in some way blocked or having struggles or obstacles toward helping the world to truly understand who you are. What is your identity? What is your sense of self? What are your values? And being able to express those in the world in a way other people will be able to see it, such that your sense of self and what they think and see about you are in alignment and match each other closely enough. And I think the reason why this sometimes happens is because sometimes people may feel some shame about who they are, what they want, what they value, and do not want to express it openly, honestly, authentically, and vulnerably with other people in the world. And that's where the disconnect comes from. And so that can be one way that we block our creative expression, is by hiding our true selves. So I am going to put a link to this article in the description box below so that if you want to read the article or take a look at this quadrant map, you'll be able to do so. And that will get us talking about the concept of self-awareness. And I have lots of thoughts about that, but since I've already been talking for a bit, I will turn it over to Dave and see what he has to say.
Well, I infer from what you're saying is when we have a lot of awareness of our internal experience of ourself, and that is very congruous or in sync with the way people perceive us, then manifestation flows out of us very directly, and what we see ourselves doing in the world very closely matches how we perceive ourselves privately. Is that what I got, what you were saying?
Yes. And in fact, the article says that people who are in the quadrant of high self-awareness about their inner world and high self-awareness about how their inner world matches the way other people see them, when they're in that quadrant, they tend to have much more satisfying lives, more satisfying relationships, more satisfying careers. So definitely there's something to be said for that in terms of being able to manifest and bring about what it is that you want to see in your life.
So we were talking about intention last time and awareness, attention, where we place our attention, which is related to what our intention is. And so here is, to me, why self-awareness is very important. If I go on to Google and I say I need to plot a path to route Mount Rushmore, it's going to ask me where I'm starting from. There's no way I can plot the path without knowing my beginning point. And so the old phrase attributed to Confucius that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with but a single step, I would say, and it begins with where you're at. So self-awareness is absolutely critical to cultivating a sense of where you're at. And, you know, the corollary to that is very much a lot of self-acceptance and honesty about what's going on. Because if we are blind to where we're at, if we're not honest with ourselves about how we're reacting, experiencing, then our destination will continue to be elusive because we can't really plot the path, because there are distractions and, as Yvonne would say, blockages that are invisible to us. Or as I've heard other people say, it's like you hit a speed bump and then you come back down and all the wheels fell off the car and you've got to rebuild the car before you can even proceed. So self-awareness is at the root of leading an empowered existence where your manifestations very directly match the inspiration that is in your heart.
Yeah. And I also want to bring this back to the idea of observation, because honest observation without evaluation is essential to building self-awareness and expanding your consciousness. And without that, that's, in my opinion, that's what this whole program, certainly it's what NBC is about. It's about increasing consciousness expansion such that you can maintain connection, self-connection, connection with others, connection with your environment. And I think it's true of the artist's way as well, that self-awareness is absolutely essential to your unbounded creative expression. Because if you have a vision in your mind of what you want to create, and yet you find that you have a lot of difficulty moving toward it, or that the movement toward it is so painfully slow, then we need to bring some awareness to why is that so, you know? And I think it's the NBC principle of observation that helps us to find the answers to those questions. And I think that's also why it's important, like David said, to know where we are at this particular moment, and also know where we intend to go, so that we can see what are the steps along the way. So if I have an intention to build a business in consciousness expansion and life transformation that allows me to support myself, and for me that is my heart work, that is my creative expression. So if I have that intention and yet I find that I am not reaching that place on the map where I'm headed, or it's taking so long to get there, then I need to make some observations about where am I, and what are the obstacles between where I am and where I am hoping to go. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So when we are into pretending, pretense, and are not honest with ourselves, then there is an insecurity within us because it becomes hard to distinguish what's real and what's not. And that festers and manifests as doubt and helplessness. So if basically self-esteem and confidence are anchored in really being able to be honest with oneself about how one is behaving, about what one is perceiving, about what really matters to one. And generally, when we are really connected with, becomes connected with some truth within us that really rings true, we're going to have two reactions. We're either going to have, oh, wow, that's it, I know it, or, oh, crap, I knew it was that, oh, man. Both of those reactions are really symptoms of really finding the ore, finding the vein that's worth mining as we continue to excavate who we are and discover our true nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I want to toss one more thing out there that has been really important to me this week in the program, which is the recognition that when you are doing real transformational work, you know, you can read the book, you can watch these videos, you can talk about it, you can write in your journal, but there comes a point where you either choose to do real transformational work or you're just pretending. And if you are doing real transformational work, you're going to see something. And often it will manifest sometimes in outcomes. I mean, that's the most obvious to see. But sometimes it will manifest in some really intense emotions coming up, and sometimes even some slightly bizarre behavior. And I want to bring some awareness to this as well, because many people, well, David and I both know, because this is our life's work. So we know that this symptom of transformation and initiatory work is actually typical, it's normal, and it is actually something to welcome and embrace, even though it can be a little bit scary because the emotions can be very tense. Yeah, it can be uncomfortable. So, but I wanted to give you a little heads up, because if you notice that happening, that's something blessed. It's an indication that you are actually making progress, that you are doing real transformational work. Because as I said, what we're transforming basically is an integration of the shadow. The shadow is anything, it's any energy that we've clumped in our bodies, that we've repressed over the years, our fear, our shame, our pain, our trauma, our woundedness, that we have held down, clumped in these tight, energetic balls in our body, literally. I mean, our energetic body, literally.
No, our physical body too.
Yeah, and so as you do transformational work, what happens is, what it's in alchemy, it's called lead. What happens is those clumps of repressed energy that we've been holding down for so long begin to dissolve. And when that stuff comes up to be processed and integrated, it can be disturbing, it can be uncomfortable, and a little bit frightening. And it can actually go both ways. It can be intense joy, ecstasy, rapture, and then it can be anger, rage, and it can be fear and anxiety and strange dreams, strange vivid dreams, and it can be depression. And so if you're experiencing any really intense emotions that you just don't understand where this is coming from, and it doesn't make any sense, and sometimes it even comes out as strange behaviors, like snap at someone or do something impulsive that you've never done before, just give yourself, a little maybe a little bit of, self-empathy and self-care, and recognize, okay, you're going through a process here that is really profound and powerful, and this is a natural part of that. So just keep some awareness around that as well. Okay. So, and if that does come up for you, remember to write about it in your journal. You're welcome to put comments below. And of course, we will talk about these things when we get together for our conference call, end of week check-in. Anything you want to add?
Yeah. So we've used the phrase the shadow a lot. Shadows are darkness. It's where we can't really see what's going on. So we talked about attention last time. Attention is like a flashlight. Whatever we put our attention on becomes visible to us. Mm-hmm. And so the reason we use the phrase the shadow is it's when we're doing the shadow, it's stuff that's invisible. Mm-hmm. It's not in our awareness. There's no light on it. So when we're talking about doing shadow work, we're talking about shining lights into places that aren't used to being seen. Mm-hmm. And initially, they're very uncomfortable with being visible. Mm-hmm. The other thing that happens is light encodes warmth, attention. So I talked about the chi in the last video, the life animating force. So when we put our attention on these places that were previously invisible, energy, life flows into them and warms them, and it creates a loosening. And I'm going to have to cough here. At least I was able to warn you. And that creates movement, because the shadow is often frozen. Mm-hmm. It's repeating pattern over and over. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to add a little explanation of why the word shadow is used.
Yeah. And I guess I want to include with that not just the range of intense emotions you might experience, but also different levels of energy coming up. Sometimes you might be very high energy, and the creative energy is just flowing, unbounded, and you're so productive, almost wired, and that can be really fun.
Can it be wild?
Yeah, it can be wild.
Instead of wired?
Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, so there's that end of the energy level, and it can even feel a little bit manic, but mostly it's usually enjoyable. And then there can be another end, of the spectrum where you can experience some exhaustion, and I'll be talking about that more in my check-in video, because I've been going through the whole spectrum this week. It's been pretty intense. So I think that's about it. Did you want to say anything before we close out?
Well, you're talking spectrum. Mm-hmm. So, there can also be rage or grief. Yeah. Often things are in the shadow and invisible to us because there's rage and grief encoded in them. And so when we first are doing shadow work, often that's what comes up. And that's like the guardian to the threshold. We start to move into a little bit of grief, a little bit of anger. And we're like, oh no. And we back off, mm-hmm. and they continue to be invisible. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we have courage and we've set our intention like the last video, so our intent is really clear. That gives us the courage to keep our awareness there, so that we can bring more light in and get past that threshold and see the life-serving energy beneath it.
Yeah. And I don't know if I had mentioned another feeling that might come up is shame. So just so, like I said, give you a little bit of heads up that if you are having any intense emotions, things that are happening, the ways that you're behaving, feeling you don't quite understand, or a broad spectrum of energy levels, that this is actually completely normal, completely natural. It's part of the transformational work. So, you know, allow yourself to have some kindness toward yourself when you're going through that. Okay. Well, then we are finished for today, and I want to
ring the bell.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to end the video there.
no, I'm learning now. That David reminds me every time, so I'm learning now to mention to everyone to please subscribe to these videos. We're trying to build a community here of people, like-minded people who want to spread compassionate communication in the world and who want to see a world of more creative expression, unbounded creative expression, because that is our true wealth as human beings. Our ingenuity, our innovation, our creativity. So we can live in a world of compassion, creativity, wealth, abundance, and everyone having an opportunity to meet their fullest potential. So let's create this community together. So like I said, please subscribe, click like, ring the bell for notifications, and add your comments below. And we will see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.